National Agriculture Leaders Roundtable. We have a number of folks here from all around the country, and I think there's one primary reason why we were all here. We have a crisis brewing in eastern North Carolina that is a threat not only to North Carolina agriculture, but a threat to agriculture nationwide. And again, it's just not limited to the impact, the economic impact here in North Carolina. Its ramifications are very real for all of American agriculture all throughout the country. I want to recognize the individuals that are here around the table and some other notable guests. First, I want to recognize Chairman Mike Conaway. Chairman Conaway is a member of Congress from Texas. He chairs the House Agriculture Committee. And for those of you who are wondering how I became chairman of the Livestock and Foreign Agriculture Subcommittee, it's because of Mike Conaway, here to my right. So,
well, the fact that you do a good job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that too. But we're very thrilled to have Chairman Conaway here. I think that helps to underscore the significance of this issue nationally. Senator Tom Tillis to my left. Most of you know Senator Tillis, one of our two fine United States senators representing the state of North Carolina. We also have, obviously, Commissioner Steve Troxler here at the round table. We have and are very distinguished to have with us the Undersecretary for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Farm Production and Conservation, Undersecretary Bill Northey. Thank you for your participation. We're very honored and to have a very distinguished guest in President Zippy Duval, President of the American Farm Bureau. Zippy? Yeah, raise your hand so everybody will see who you are in the audience. We've got Larry Wooten, President of North Carolina Farm Bureau. Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, I believe, is here. Right, okay, right here to my left. I knew you were supposed to be here somewhere. We've got Commissioner Hugh Weathers from the South Carolina Department of Agriculture.
He's on his way. His plane just landed.
Okay. A lot of folks had a little difficulty getting here today due to the weather, especially those that were in the air. Commissioner Gary Black, the Commissioner of Agriculture from Georgia. We've got Secretary Michael Skuse. I hope I pronounced that right, Delaware. We have Commissioner Sid Miller, Texas Department of Agriculture. Raise that hat one more time. We've got North Carolina Senator Brent Jackson, who most everybody here in the room knows. North Carolina Representative Jimmy Dixon is with us. North Carolina Representative Ken Goodman. We've got North Carolina House Majority Leader John Bell. Dr. Kelly Zering from NC State University. And Dr. Zering traveled all the way from Newark, I believe.
By car.
By car.
Wow.
Last night because his flight was canceled. Thank you. Got here at 2:30 a.m. this morning. We have Barb Glenn, CEO of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Howard Hill, past president of the National Pork Producers Council. We've got Brad Cornelius, CEO of Cape Fear Farm Credit. Dave Coram, CEO of Ag Carolina. Vance Dalton Jr., CEO of Carolina Farm Credit. And then commodity group representatives that are in the front couple rows here. We have with the American Soybean Association, Jimmy Thomas. We have Timmy Thomas with the National Association of Wheat Growers. Robbie Minnick, who came down from D.C. With the National Cotton Council. We have Gary Floyd, Executive Vice President of L. Harvey Incorporated, here representing the Agriculture Retailers Association. We have Colleen Willard with the National Corn Growers Association. We have Trey Braswell, President of Braswell Family Farms, representing United Egg Producers. Mr. Bob Sutter with the North Carolina Peanut Growers Association. Mr. Jeffrey Lee, I know I saw him somewhere earlier. Jeffrey is representing the U.S. Sweet Potato Council. We have Mr. John Stewart representing the American Feed Industry Association. We have Brian Blinson representing the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And we have Carrie Doughty, CEO of Butterball, representing National Turkey Federation. I want to thank everybody for being here, and I think for those of you who are watching in the broader audience, you can see that we have a wide array of elected officials, other highly ranked government officials from all throughout the country, as well as commodity groups represented at the national level here today. Now I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Conaway to say a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Senator Tom Tillis after Chairman Conaway.
Well, David, thank you for convening this event. David came to me a month or so ago and has explained to me what was going on. He said he wanted to have a hearing, which has a certain amount of trappings to it, but not a crowd like this. So I told him, well, we'll do something and I'll come down and visit with you. But good grief, this is amazing. Y'all are well represented by David. He's one of the integral leaders on my committee. One of the few freshmen, he's not a freshman now, but one of the few freshmen to ever be a subcommittee chairman because of his talent and his background and his experience. And he's had a big role in getting the Farm Bill to where we are right now, and I really appreciate his efforts on y'all's behalf. I'm just basically here to listen today, figure out what's going on, try to understand what's happening. Clearly, national implications, not just North Carolina, but national implications. This is also a great example, terrible example, quite frankly, of the growing disconnect between those who eat and those who produce it. And that divide between urban and rural America is apparently going to get worse and worse. And if this concept stands, then it's going to be really difficult for America to feed itself with American-grown products and American-grown own food. So we've got to figure out a way to solve that. There's a terrific cross-section of folks here today. I think we'll get a great perspective on what's going on and why. Kelly, I was just whining about getting here at 1 o'clock. I thought it was terrible, but first liar never stands a chance. But, so thank you for hammering on in here and getting in here. But you got a great panel, and looking forward to what I'm going to learn today, and then seeing where David and I can weigh in, and Senator Tillis can weigh in if there's a federal issue that's afoot with this thing. And so looking forward to David's continued work on the Farm Bill. We'll get that done next month. And with that, David, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, give Chairman Conaway a real round of applause for coming. How many of you went to the doctor this week and applauded your doctor after he finished? So David and Tom and I are just doing our job. Anyway, thank you for the applause, but I'm on your payroll, and so I don't. Unnecessary, David, but thank you. Well, as a fellow colleague in Congress, I can tell you how demanding our schedules are. Chairman Conaway rearranged a few things to be here this morning, came all the way from Texas in spite of the weather. So we're very, very grateful to have you here. Senator Tillis?
Thank you, David, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for being here. I also would like to recognize, if you could just raise your hands, the other elected officials from the legislature who are here. Because this is important to them, and it's very important to me. We've had a series of discussions, and it was a month or so ago that David and I were on a conference call, and we were talking about some of the cases that are pending now, and they were talking about the gag order that's placed on the people that are involved in these cases, and they can't actually speak about the injustice that I think is occurring in the courts, and that's why we have to be their voice. You think about this case, all of you know it, that's why you're here, but if you think about this case, imagine somebody investing their blood, sweat, and tears in building a farm over decades. And then, as we grow as a state, people come and get closer to a farm operation that's been around forever, living peacefully with people in neighborhoods and everybody else. And somebody comes in and they have a trial lawyer come up to them and convince them they may have a case to actually change the character, in this case of Eastern North Carolina, and all of a sudden shut down a farm operation based on legal technicalities, destroying communities, destroying farms, and ultimately destroying our food source. I mean, the people that are watching this need to know that your food doesn't come from Harris Teeter or your grocery store. It comes from the people in this room. And you got these trial lawyers who are getting paid a lot of money coming into the state, getting the people that they're representing virtually nothing, and then going back to their mansions, eating the food you produce, and not caring one bit about what they do to their communities. We have got to make I'm actually sorry that you all have to be here because you know it and you live it every day. And we've got to do everything we can to put pressure on these people that are coming to our state trying to destroy it. And we've got to do everything we can legally or through the statutes to make it very difficult for them. Ultimately, a lot of these people, I hope we can put out of a job. Send them back to the states that they live in, send their money back to the states that they live in, get out of North Carolina and let us continue to do what y'all done well for centuries. So thank you all for being here, but I'm sorry you have to be here. I'd much rather you be back on your farms, back in your businesses, making sure that we have a food supply, and food security is national security. We need to communicate to the American people and people in North Carolina. It is going to affect every single one of them if we don't figure out a way how to stop them in their tracks here and to prevent them from spreading like a cancer across this country.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. I want to add there are two other gentlemen, colleagues of Chairman Conaway's and mine in the U.S. House that wanted to be here today, have taken a very active interest in this and are following it very, very closely. One is Chairman Bob Goodlatte. Chairman Goodlatte is Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. The other, and I should also add, Chairman Goodlatte previously, as many of you in this room know, was Chairman of the House Agriculture Committee. So he has a very unique perspective, maybe one of the few chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House that's ever had also been chairman of the House Agriculture Committee. He may be the first, but he's was sorry that he was not able to be here today. The other one is Robert Adderholt, who chairs the House Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee. Chairman Adderholt is from Alabama, and he is quite interested and concerned with this issue as well.
By the
Now-
way, Richard Hudson also, he's down in Fort Bragg. He wanted to be here, but he cares a lot about it. And he's not on the committee, but he's got your back as well.
Absolutely, and I noticed Don Davis is in the office, in the audience here. Don? Office as well for this morning, huh? Don and I served together in the state senate for a term, and Don, great to see you and glad that you're here. Now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner of Agriculture, Steve Troxler. I've asked the commissioner to give a quick overview of the scenario here in the state so that our broader audience will have a better understanding of why this is so concerning to each of us. He will be our first presenter of the four that we have on deck, and then we will move into our roundtable discussion. Commissioner Troxler.
Congressman Rouser, thank you and Senator Tillis for your leadership in putting this together here today. And Chairman Conaway, we couldn't be any more honored than to have you here and be interested in this issue. And thanks to my staff that have worked so hard with Congressman Rouser's staff and the Senator Tillis' staff to get this together. But the real thanks is to the people that are here today to support the effort to right a wrong. Congressman Rouser has asked me to kind of explain why we're here today and how we got here today, and unfortunately we know. I would describe what's going on in North Carolina as a blight. This is something that can not only affect our animal agriculture, it's going to affect our crop agriculture, and it affects farmers and people. I think back to when we had the high path avian influenza a couple years ago, and the states pulled together. We worked with our federal partners to stamp that out and to make sure that it didn't spread all across the country, and that's what we're doing here today. This is an issue that if we don't do something about it right now, there's not a farm in this country that is going to be safe. What is a nuisance? Well, I'm not sure, but I think it's something that somebody else doesn't like. That's what it sounds like it is, and I'm sure that there are people that don't like what we do in agriculture. Although you know, when they don't like it, they're biting the hand that feeds them. And that's what I really don't understand. And to put the word agriculture and nuisance in the same sentence is just ridiculous. And quite frankly, it makes me madder than hell. So that's the reason we're here today. We know how this blight got here. It started with a couple of out-of-state trial lawyers, one from Kansas City and one from, I believe, Savannah, Georgia. So when the trial started in 2013, the first federal judge took a look at this and said, well, you know, what you've done is not ethical. You can't come to North Carolina and go door to door and recruit people to sue and not have a license and not be affiliated with another law firm. So what the end result was, he basically threw them off the case. So I guess we thought, well, it's over. You know, the judge recognized this is wrong, so it's over. But it's not over. What happened was, even though I'd like to blame it on out-of-state trial lawyers, we happen to have some here in North Carolina that are just as greedy. So they picked it up and joined with a lawyer out of Texas to continue these lawsuits. So there's been a lot that's going on in the courtroom that none of us understand. We don't think that there has been a fair hearing by our peers on this issue, even to the point that a statue of a pig covered with mud was in the courtroom during the first trial, and I understand made another appearance in the courtroom, and he has affectionately been named Wilbur. So Wilbur's been in the courtroom for what reason we don't know, but you know, this has got to stop. Farmers are being put out of business because of this, and if you read a lot of the things that are being said about it, they say, well, we're not suing the farmers, we're suing a multinational corporation. But the end result is farmers will not get hogs back on these hog farms. And my analogy is if I've got a candy store and I can't get candy to put in that store, well, I'm out of business. That's what's going on here today. So I am honored to have everybody here today to discuss this. We have got to stand shoulder to shoulder to stop it nationally. Food is a national security issue. There's no question about it. When we lose that ability to feed ourselves, then we won't last long. But it's also about what America's about. When you work hard and you obey the laws, you obey the rules, and you may lose everything you've got for no reason, that's not the American way. That's not living the American dream. So there are a lot of underlying issues that we've got to address and address now. There's something that I never missed the opportunity to say, and I hope you remember this. Hungry people are mean people. We in North Carolina, we in the United States of America have the ability. We are efficient enough and know what we're doing. We can feed the country. We can help feed a hungry world. But we've got to be on the farm to be able to do that. We can't do it from a courtroom. So it's got to stop. It's got to stop now. I thank all of your interest in being here today, and especially want to thank the overflow crowd in the Scott building for coming out and showing your support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate your leadership for all these years for North Carolina agriculture, and particularly now. I happen to look to my right here, and I see State Representative Holly Grange. I didn't get a chance to introduce her a few minutes ago, so I want to make mention of her. If there are any other state elected officials in the audience, somebody bring me a sheet of paper and let me know who they are, and I want to over here.
Yeah.
I understand we have Kelly Hastings here.
And the winner is, no.
Where's Kelly at? Oh, there you are. Okay, yeah, you're out of my line of sight. Sorry about that. And let's see, Representative Larry Strickland. Larry, where are you at? Okay, out of my sight as well. And David Lewis. David Lewis, where are you? Right over here. Thank you all for being here. If there are any other elected officials that I've missed, just send me a note and I'll make sure that you get recognized so everybody knows who is here. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Kelly Zering with NC State University to talk about the economics of this and potential impact.
I'll just say a few words about the economics of agriculture in North Carolina.
Make sure your microphone is on there.
Okay. So agriculture has been the largest industry in North Carolina for a long time.
Nationally, livestock is about half of agricultural income, equal to crops. In North Carolina, about 68% of farm income is from livestock, and about 20% of income is from hogs. We do a little bit of economic impact analysis from time to time, and one of the estimates we have is that about 46,000 jobs in North Carolina, about $3 billion in value-added income, this is wages, salaries, property taxes, payments on financing and so forth, are due to the hog industry. And only about 7,100 of those jobs are actually on the farm. The other ones, the other 40, almost 40,000 are elsewhere. An important part of that is processing. Without the hogs, there's no processing. And without those two industries, all the input suppliers, all the people who sell groceries and real estate and everything else to the people who work in those jobs would not be there. We're doing another study right now to add some more detail and update what we've done. One of the things we've been looking at is the county impact. So in Bladen County, which is home to the largest processing plant, more than 40% of the jobs, more than 50% of the value-added income is due to that industry. So if that industry goes away, that county's in a lot of trouble. Sampson County, which is a very diversified agricultural county, also has a big impact from the hog industry. 20% of value-added income and more than 14% of jobs. So this is a very important industry that's integral to these counties. Over my 34 years of watching agriculture and trying to contribute in North Carolina, I've seen the economies improve in rural North Carolina. Economic development is a challenge even today, and if these businesses go away, it's very difficult to replace them. Many counties that are flourishing today were losing population and had very poor economies, among the worst in the state when I first started working about 30 years ago. One last thing I'll say is we have built U.S. agriculture on the idea of production contracts and close coordination between processors and producers. And that institution is being undermined right now. If that falls apart, the industry is again challenged. It will be very difficult to justify an investment in a processing plant if you're at risk of losing that investment due to a suit. So this risk factor has become very critical. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zering. Now I'll turn to our Undersecretary, Undersecretary Bill Northey. He's Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Mr. Undersecretary, again, thank you for joining us today. Great pleasure and honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for the chance to be with you today, and certainly thanks everybody for being here. Certainly some folks that left the farm to be able to show their support as well. So as Dr. Zering said, agriculture is awful important in North Carolina. I want to be able to talk just a little bit about that broader perspective, and you see a lot of folks from outside of North Carolina that are here because there's an impact of what's happening here across other places and around the country. So certainly farming is a challenging business, both in risk and difficulty and in the markets that we're in, putting up with the weather and all the other challenges that we have out there in agriculture. And then you look at what's happened over the last handful of years, the last half dozen years or so. We had a peak in agriculture income back in 2012, 2013, and we are now at $60 billion net farm income. And over the last 3 years, that's less than half of what the net farm income was back in that 2012, 2013 time. And that is, as Dr. Zering mentioned, nationally, half of that income is made up of livestock income. And so crop income is awful important, and crop income is absolutely impacted by the profitability in livestock agriculture. If that's not there, the demand absolutely decreases the value of our crop production as well. So all farmers, whether they are crop or livestock farmers, have much at stake in the conversation around nuisance suits. They can be directly impacted or indirectly impacted as well. With the challenges that we have going forward, the projections right now are that income would be flat over the next handful of years. And again, with the inflation, that is real decreases in net farm income. So it's hard to see where that changes dramatically. And in that kind of environment, the uncertainty of nuisance lawsuits has a huge impact on agricultural productions. Certainly, we'll hear a little bit, I believe, what the impact is on lenders and others that finance agricultural production, and what that risk of nuisance lawsuits are. When you look at the potential increases in costs for fuel, interest rates, and wages, those will continue to eat at that agricultural profitability as well. When we dig a little deeper in the numbers, you look at poultry operations, about 1 out of 3 poultry operations have a debt-to-asset ratio exceeding 40%. So are highly leveraged. About 1 out of 8 hog and dairy operations are also highly leveraged, especially vulnerable to any kind of disruption in their operation, certainly in prices, but also legal disruptions or the potential for legal disruptions. So we said the closing of livestock, dairy, or poultry farm operations don't just impact that farm. They impact the neighboring community. They impact the demand for our crops that are the feed for that livestock as well. And so that impact is well beyond the individual farmer. It's devastating to the individual farmer. And those closely associated, it's an impact much broader than that as well. About half of the total gross sales for agriculture, total gross sales of livestock products in this country is $175 billion. It's a huge part of the income, direct income in our rural communities out here, and then the indirect impact is dramatic as well. So as we look at that risk of those lawsuits and what they do, they not only affect the potential investment that livestock producers are making to modernize their operations or to expand their operations, but they impact our future generations as well. We think of beginning farmers and the opportunities that many of them have through contract operations to be able to start an operation, to grow an operation, and threats of lawsuits are the kinds of things that turn some young families away from that opportunity, especially when we need them now. As you look at agriculture going forward, we especially need young people to see the promise and the opportunity, and there's great promise and opportunity in agriculture, and we don't want to lose that through the distraction that certainly the legal vulnerability can cause for them to be. So let me just say thank you again for inviting me and us to be able to share a little bit of that perspective nationally. And certainly right on the front edge of that is North Carolina. But everybody, and you see from the folks that have flown in to be here, that everybody's with you in understanding the significance of the issues here in North Carolina. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for the broader audience that may be listening or watching this morning, I think it's important to highlight that in North Carolina, agriculture is an $85 billion industry. Commissioner, correct me if I'm off by $1 billion here or there, but
87.
87 billion. I could tell by the way he was giving me that eye that I was
Changed
slightly
last
off.
week, didn't it?
It should be $100 billion.
We're headed that way.
Amen.
$87 billion industry in North Carolina, and one of the most diverse agriculture states in the country, if not the most diverse agriculture state. Where do we rank now? There?
I think number 3.
Number 3. That's what it traditionally has been, but I didn't want to say 3 and it'd be 2. But anyhow, now I'd like to turn it over to Brad Cornelius, CEO of Cape Fear Farm Credit, to give the lending industry perspective.
Thank you, Congressman Rouser.
Why don't you check your microphone there? I think it's working.
All right, can you hear me now?
Pull it closer.
Pull it a little closer. There you go.
On behalf of Ag Carolina Farm Credit.
Pull it a little closer to you.
All right.
We'll get this right eventually.
On behalf of Ag Carolina Farm Credit, Carolina Farm Credit, and Cape Fear Farm Credit, we are proud to support our state's farmers with reliable, consistent credit and financial
We may need to
services.
get him another microphone.
Had too many up here, concentrated around the politicians.
Thank you, Senator Tillis.
So can you hear me now?
Yes,
Thank you,
you're
Senator
good.
Tillis. I'm assuming my friend Vance Dalton is behind the microphone not working. Starting again. The Farm Credit System has been in existence for more than 100 years. And
Bring it a little closer to you.
Yeah.
There you go.
The Farm Credit System has been around for 100 years and understands the importance of family farms to this great nation. These families are the backbone of rural America. Today, we have concern that many North Carolina farm families are involved in these potentially damaging lawsuits and their livelihoods are being put at risk. As you know, hog farming is among the most heavily regulated industries in North Carolina, and our customers take great pride in abiding by these regulations. Farmers who follow the laws made by our elected legislature should not be at risk in our courtrooms. Farmers take great pride in their operations, their treatment of livestock, the care of the environment, and providing the safe and affordable food that all Americans enjoy. These same farmers value their neighbors and their communities, and they make great efforts to regularly meet all existing environmental regulations. Independent family farmers who own and operate contract pork, chicken, and turkey operations are vital to the economy of rural North Carolina, and our rural communities depend on agriculture to have the standard of living we have today. So we're deeply concerned that these lawsuits are but the first in a series of attacks on animal agriculture and the integrated livestock model that has proved so successful in North Carolina. In a time where farmers are suffering from low commodity prices, weather-related stress, and uncertainty due to trade issues, we need to stand behind our farmers now more than ever. To our political leaders at all levels, first of all, thank you for being here and for arranging this forum for us to speak. We respectfully ask that you see this as an opportunity to remind consumers of the importance of agriculture. We ask that you look for solutions to protect the agricultural industry from these damaging lawsuits as our farmers continue to serve consumers and follow established laws and regulations. In closing, on behalf of the Farm Credit staff that lives and works all over rural North Carolina, we thank you for taking the time to listen, for passing the 2018 North Carolina Farm Act and adding its protections for our farmers, and for your service to our people and our nation. Special thanks to Senator Tillis, Congressman Rouser, and Commissioner Croxler for arranging this event and all the staff work that took. Lastly, we want to thank all those in attendance in advance for your support of agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Cornelius, and sorry. Sorry we had a bad microphone there, but appreciate your presentation very much. You know, it strikes me that a nuisance is very much like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. You know, a nuisance one day may be one thing, the next day to somebody else, it's a totally, completely different subject matter. And certainly, I think it's very important for the wider, broader television audience, radio audience, and anybody else out there that might be listening to this today, to understand that production agriculture is a highly regulated enterprise, especially animal agriculture. And it strikes me that if you are complying with all the federal and state rules and regulations, there should be some safe harbor, some protection against lawsuits of this nature. That's my short editorial comment as we move into the roundtable discussion, and I'm going to turn to Zippy Duvall, the president of the American Farm Bureau. Zippy, thank you so much for being with us here today, and I know everybody here is very, very grateful for your presence.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I'm proud to be in North Carolina this morning. Unfortunately, we should be here celebrating the productivity, that of our American farmers put out each and every day to feed our country and keep it safe and feed the rest of the world. But we're here today to talk about something that's very unfortunate, talk about nuisance. But I'd like to start out with, we are being attacked as American agriculture. All over this country, there are things happening that are putting our farmers and ranchers at risk, out of our control. Labor issues, we do not have enough labor on our farms. Trade issues, we need to open up our trade. Overregulation, and we appreciate this administration working on taking down some of the regulations that's in front of us. And an industry in a time where the economy is booming, our farmers and ranchers have had their income cut 50% over the last 4 or 5 years. Now you tell me what other family can survive that. Today, farmers and ranchers from North Carolina, I have sat here to represent all the farmers and ranchers across America, thousands of them, and we have your back. We want to make sure that what you're going through is made known by everyone in the country. Because if it's in your backyard today, it'll be in my backyard tomorrow. See, this is just not about you. This is not about a nuisance. This is not just about money. I take this personally because I left my farm 2.5 years ago, where I've been growing poultry and still grow poultry today, 32 years. I left my farm to try to make a difference in your life with some great people that work at American Farm Bureau and the great state farm bureaus across this country. And we want to make sure that we make a difference in your life. So this is personal to me, because I know that it could come to my neighborhood. It could come to my farm. And if you want to talk about a nuisance, let me tell you what a country boy thinks a nuisance is. I have to live in the middle of Washington, D.C. During the week when I'm up there working with these great individuals that give their time to serve you. But, the noise, the fumes from the buses, the smell of my neighbors. They're all there inside the city. No one's starting a lawsuit there. Sirens. My wife, actually, I got to get off. So my wife had to get me a sound machine so I could sleep at night. And I wasn't comfortable with the sound it was making. I was going through them, I found crickets. So I sleep with crickets every night in the middle of Washington, D.C., because I think I'm back on the farm with the window open. But we are facing things, for us for the American people to think that we can farm and not have the particular smells and sounds and sights that we have that I love, that I crave to go back to every day, it's just unacceptable. We were in our communities first. We were in rural America first, and people are moving around us, and they need to understand that. This is about the people like Joey Carter. And I understand as a grower of an integrator, if something happened, got attacked to that integrator that I work for, they're going to depopulate my farm from my chickens. And I'm sitting there with hundreds of thousands of debt on those buildings that I house those chickens in. And by the way, they're more comfortable than my family is sometimes. And if they depopulate it, there's no one going to come back and do it. So this might be about, they say, going after big companies and big money, but really the ones that are going to suffer the consequences are our farmers and ranchers that's done everything according to the law and done everything to be a good neighbor to their friends. This is pitting neighbor against neighbor and community against community, and it could spread across America and handicap the greatest food system in the world, the most efficient, the one that produces food to where everybody can afford to buy it, and a quality that's unseen anywhere else in the world. So I say, I think the regulation needs to be on trial lawyers. And we need to let our farmers and ranchers here in North Carolina and across America do what they do best, and that's to keep our country safe by feeding it and making sure that we help feed the rest of the world, because hungry people do get mad. They do get angry, and it causes wars. I'll close with this. In Colossians 3:23, it says, whatever you do in life, whether you're a farmer or a banker or work for the government, we ought to do it with all our heart as though we was doing it for the Lord. Farmers and ranchers wake up every morning and do their job as though they were doing it for the Lord. And I promise you, they will not be a nuisance to our Lord. Our farmers and ranchers deserve a fair shot, and we deserve the opportunity to grow and thrive in a booming economy that we see today, not be attacked. And we encourage that the people around us don't bite the hand that feeds them. Thank you for allowing me to be here, and we got your back.
President Duval, you are a great voice for American agriculture. I don't think I've ever heard it put so well and so succinctly. Just point of information for folks that may be curious, and if you're in the Scott building and you're looking around trying to figure out how many of you are in there, I understand we have 750 people in the Scott building that are watching this simulcast, thanks to all the great work of the commissioner and his team. Speaking of commissioners, we have a number of commissioners here, everywhere from Delaware to Texas, and so I'll throw the floor open to y'all if any one of you have anything you want to chime in on here.
Well, thank you. I was thinking maybe Commissioner Weathers was going to grab the microphone first, so.
And follow Zippy Duval. Oh no, you're on your own.
That's why I figured I'd grab the microphone, I'd be the idiot, and the rest of you look good. You know, coming from Delaware, one of the smallest states in the nation, I have to point out this really and truly is a nationwide issue, and I want to thank our members of the Senate and the House of Representatives for being here today to listen to this. This really and truly is impacting all of our states. And I think the other thing that needs to be understood is agriculture is the #1 industry in North Carolina. But in almost all of the rest of the states of the United States, agriculture also is the #1 industry. It's the #1 industry in my state of Delaware. And we are truly under attack. We get calls daily about our poultry houses. Sussex County, Delaware is the largest poultry producing county in the United States. And we get calls and complaints about the poultry houses. Doesn't matter that the poultry houses had been there for 10 or 15 years before somebody from the city decided they wanted to move to Delaware. They want them gone. And it does have an impact on the rest of our industries. If we lose our poultry industry on the Delmarva Peninsula, takes up part of Maryland, who's the deputies sitting behind me, and counties in Virginia, that's a huge loss for us. And I don't know that any of agriculture would survive if we lost our poultry industry. I mean, our grain prices would plummet to the point where we would be so far under Chicago market that our grain farmers could not survive. So it does have an impact, and that impact then goes to our smaller communities in the state of Delaware. How will they survive? How will the smaller communities across the United States survive if, in fact, these suits continue to put our producers out of business? And I think Undersecretary Northey pointed out, this does make it difficult for us to recruit young people into agriculture. You know, when you look at the current state of agriculture, if you look at the prices, you look at the regulation that we have to go through, and now you throw the possibility of these lawsuits on top of that, that makes it that much more difficult to recruit that next generation into agriculture. So from the state of Delaware, we would certainly appreciate any help that we could get at the federal level to try to find a way to prevent these lawsuits from putting our hardworking producers out of business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will I'll follow Michael Skews. That's easier task.
Thanks for the compliment.
As North Carolina's neighbor, sister state to the south, South Carolina fights some of the same issues. We're not quite on the front line this year, but I made some notes here as I was listening. We've talked before, the average person now is 4 generations removed from a farm. I believe, pardon the pun, is coming home to roost. Some of those who've been removed went to law school and apparently wanted to become a trial lawyer and go back to the farm in a different way. So we are seeing some of the drawbacks of the efficiencies of American agriculture, in that less than 1.5% of us, I'm a farmer, feed the rest. I saw a statistic this week that in the United States, a number of urban areas, maybe 300 plus, cover 3.5% of our land mass, yet generate somewhere in the 80% of the economic activity of the United States. This is an urban-rural issue. We have worked hard to establish coalitions with our environmental-minded neighbors, non-farm neighbors in South Carolina. I'm sure you have as well, to have them understand that it is agriculture that is the last best hope of rural America. Again, pointing out the difference where our economic activity, they do not have an understanding for what we do. They just see that it's there on the table, and they assume all of agriculture is thriving because of the results. That is a result, again, of our efficiencies, one of the challenges that we have. Farmers would rather farm than fight battles. In that, they are depending on those of us around this table, in this room, to help fight those battles for them, but not completely. We do need that grassroots engagement that is so critical for leaders to see that rural America does depend on farming. One thing, we don't want to, and you pick the number of years, 10, 15 years, to have a group have to say, I told you so. We told you that if you did not listen to the fact that agriculture feeds this country and is next to national security, what we might face. We are proud of agriculture, that we were one of the positive trade balances with the world for the United States. But if you dig into that, for the most part, that's bulk grains that go elsewhere for further processing. If you look a little farther, you'll see that we're importing, if you like seafood in America, there's an 85% chance it came from somewhere else. If you like to eat fruits, like my wife encourages me to do, which occasionally I comply, anyway, there's over a 50% chance it comes from somewhere else. Vegetables, now passing 30% of importing. And our question is, protein is one of the last stands that we can make. Beef, chicken, pork, you name it, and is poultry, is proteins next in that scheme. So we don't mind our T-shirts coming from Taiwan, but we don't want our vegetables from Venezuela or our meat from Mexico. So we just need to manage and be aware that rural America is counting on us, and we need to send that message. It has become, in too many issues, it's become urban versus rural, and I think this is another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Gary Black, Commissioner of Georgia.
Mr. Chairman and all, thank you for your leadership and being here. Thank you for letting us participate. There's maybe another front for us to consider too. I look at and have been honored to meet Joey this morning, and have kept up with the fight. And I wonder about those who would oppose him, those who would advocate for the position that's been taken. I wonder if we ask them, do you think local food is important? And I would suggest that they would embrace that with all their heart. They want to go to the local restaurant, to deal with the local chef, to buy the local product, to go to the cute local market without any of that connection of what it takes to get it there. That's fruit and vegetable. It's protein, as Hugh has said. It's all the products that we produce. But Senator, I talked with our Senator Perdue and our Secretary Perdue. He's got a copy of this as well. We've been made aware of some of the NAFTA discussions going on with Mexico and the president now. And there appears to be a letter from the president of Mexico that states an intention to plant 1 million hectares of fresh fruits, of fruits and vegetables in the near future. And there's a veiled representation of perhaps that's a way to solve the immigration problem, is to keep people in Central America here. That should alarm everyone in this room. Because what I'm curious about, of all those who would have this position that we should have local, if we allow this to happen, will you consider Mexico local? I don't think so. We're not going to be willing to do that. But we're going to be the voice for you, Joy, in Georgia and in this region, and join with this outstanding team that's here and others. President Duval, we shall make a stand, and we'll make it together. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Miller, you want to comment?
Well, y'all may be wondering, what's the Texan doing here? He's a little far from home. Well, it's like this. The enemy of my friend is my enemy. And it doesn't matter where you are in agriculture. We've got to stand up for one another, and I'm here to support my good friend, Steve, and what y'all are trying to do here in North Carolina. And I think we need to look at the big picture here. It doesn't really matter if you're a dairy farmer in upstate New York, or you're growing corn in Illinois or Iowa, or you're apples in Washington State, or wine in California, or you're a farmer in Texas growing cattle and cotton. One thing we all have in common, and I think we do as an industry a poor job of this, is you're helping get the word out, I'm working, but we've got to have more people getting the word out. We are the keepers of the land. We are good stewards of the land. We understood what sustainability was before it was a buzzword. You know, some of you have been to my office in Austin there, and in my office I have a 7-foot Comanche headdress right by my desk. People walk in and say, what in the world are you doing with that? I said, that keeps me grounded. And it's like this, that 7-foot Indian Comanche headdress reminds me that the Comanches were the original ag department, and they knew how to take care of the land. And they knew what sustainability was before it was a buzzword. And we try to keep that same grounded attitude. But we got to do a better job as an industry getting the word out. Being environmental stewards, that's our issue. We've let the environmentalists and the humaniacs take that away from us. And we need to fix that. There's one thing that every farmer or rancher has in common, without exception, no matter where you are, and that's we want to leave our farm or our ranch to our grandchildren, our children, in better shape and a better environment and cleaner water and cleaner air than when we found it. And generation after generation after generation is doing that. So I'm proud here to be in the fight with you. Anything I can do, let me know. I have to say this, we have done great tort reform in the state of Texas. And, you know, even medical malpractice insurance, we just don't have a lot of frivolous lawsuits there anymore. We've got really strong laws against that. We've got a strong right to farm law in Texas, and because of that, we've run a lot of those anti-agriculture trial lawyers out of Texas. I'm not apologizing for that, but I do regret that one of them decided to come up here, Steve. But we'll help you any way we can. I'm your huckleberry. You just tell me who you need to take it out, and I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. it's great to have a wide variety of states represented here today, and I think just really underscores the importance and the necessity of getting this right moving forward. Senator Tillis, I think you had a question for Dr. Zering. If you want to go ahead and ask that now.
Yeah, I did, because Dr. Zering, like a good economist, you quoted some percentages, but I think we need to make people real. When you talked about livestock, we've got to not only talk about pork, which is the first wave, but it's chickens, it's turkeys, it's cows, it's cattle, it's any other livestock in the state, and it's also livestock that produces eggs, livestock that produces milk. And when you tally that up, on an $87 billion industry, we are talking somewhere on the order of about $60 to $70 billion. Biggest industry in North Carolina by a long shot is at risk here. People need to understand that. They also need to understand the consequences of devastating that industry for the taxpayers. Revenue's got to come from somewhere. And if it doesn't come from the farms, it's going to come from the pockets of the taxpayers and the people paying for their groceries. What I want to talk about, though, has more to do with what we do after this meeting. And by the way, Commissioner, we actually use Texas as a model for our tort reform. I want to thank the legislators here in the room who did medical malpractice reform and tort reform. It looks like the states need to go back and figure out what more we need to do to put these trial lawyers out of a job. What I think we need to do, though, coming away from this meeting ends at 10:30, but this needs to be the beginning of a dialogue and an initiative where we bring the states together. We figure out what the state legislatures need to do. We need to come up with model legislation, and for the willing states, we need to figure out what the legislatures can do immediately, even including special sessions, to shut this down so that we're not seeing this spread in other states. So we need to come up with model legislation. We need to figure out what the federal government should do. I'm going to request hearings for both the agriculture and the judiciary committees. I sit on judiciary. I'm no longer on agriculture, so that we can raise awareness, and we need to have a lot of the people in this room at those hearings. But we need to send a very clear message to the trial lawyers. We're bigger than you when we coordinate, and we need to make sure that we come up with a very specific agenda, legislatively, in terms of public awareness. And this meeting it's a good meeting just because of the information that's been shared. It's a great meeting if it starts a movement, and we have a very specific set of tasks at the state, local, and federal level to actually protect the farmers.
Congressman, I don't want anybody to think that we haven't been proactive in North Carolina with our legislature in trying to prevent things like this. And I know that Senator Jackson put Right to Farm legislation in the Farm Act this year, and I know he's got the preamble to that in his pocket. Would it be appropriate for him and our legislators here to talk about what they've done? And I want to publicly thank them. I think they did everything that they could possibly do, but they also had to have enough votes to override a gubernatorial veto. So this is probably not as far as we would have liked to have gone, but it's as good as could be done at that time.
Senator, just a quick comment on that medical malpractice reform. After we passed that, we had 500 new doctors move into Texas, and we had 1,200 trial lawyers move to Oklahoma.
Good public policy. It works. Speaking of which, Senator Britt Jackson, you want to talk a little bit about what's been done here in the state of North Carolina?
Thank you, David, and Mr. Chairman, appreciate you being here, and Senator Tillis, appreciate y'all being here. And I just sort of want to, it's hard to follow. I'm glad I'm following my commissioner instead of Sid. He's sort of like following Zippy. But we have worked on farm issues for a number of years, since 2011, since I came into the North Carolina Senate. And this is actually our 6th Farm Act. And we used to run individual bills. I'll give you a brief history. We ran individual bills up into 2012, and we found out it was much simpler to run an omnibus bill, and we put all of it into one. And actually, this was one of our shorter farm acts that we've had, and Representative Dixon has carried the water for most of it in the House. But we realized we're trying to bring North Carolina agriculture into the 21st century. And I would encourage and strongly recommend, Senator Tillis, that you do, as you have suggested, we carry on this dialogue and we get something on the federal level. I believe what we currently have, because we enacted, and I was not part of that at the time, the right to farm in 1979, and it's been tweaked many times over. And actually, it was tweaked in 2013, and we thought we had it fixed. And then, of course, we did not. And so we have tweaked it again in 2018. We done some tweaking to it in 2017, but we really fixed it, I feel like, this time in this 2018 Farm Act. And by the way, it was Senate Bill 711, and I told my staff when we were talking, I said, well, I guess we can roll the dice and we'll see if we come up with a 7 or 11 on this one. And as I told some earlier on, I said we won out to begin with, and then we got craps when the governor vetoed it. But at the end of the day, we were able to override that veto and pass this legislation. I strongly encourage all the legislatures across this country that is listening to this or you have contact with to please look at your right to farm laws, because it has been said many times, but it cannot be said enough. There is two things that are vitally important here, and one of them is labor. You know, we have a choice here, and there again, I encourage my federal colleagues to work on that. I mean, because there's a choice there. We're either going to import our labor or we're going to import our food, and I had rather import our labor. But the other thing is we need to farm, because when you've done everything that you know to do, that, as I've said it several times, when the General Assembly and the federal government tells you to do this and you do it, and you do everything in your power to comply with everything that is thrown at you, and then you still get sued. And, you know, that's just wrong. It is just wrong on so many levels. And we must continue to fight this. We are in a battle, folks. But we're going to win this battle. I'm convinced we're going to win this battle. And I'll tell you why. As bad as this has been for most everybody, this has opened the eyes of North Carolina and I believe American farmers across this nation. And I think they're going to stand up and they're going to be counted. And it's time we were counted. I'm the only farmer in our North Carolina Senate, and that is a sad state. It really is. Jimmy is one of 4, I believe, in the North Carolina House. And it's hard for us to get this done when we're in a growing state such as North Carolina. But we can do it, and at the end of the day, we are the ones that are supplying the world with the most safest food supply that can be found anywhere. And it is time we all stand up, and that is what some of this has done. It has drawn us all closer together, making us work together and trying to find solutions, and I thank you all for being here. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. I've always admired the passion of Brent Jackson. He's agriculture through and through, and he's exactly right. Representative Dixon, you want to chime in?
Thank you, Congressman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the kind of meeting that I've dreamed about for many years. This is an amazing, I look forward when I get home tonight to write about this in my journal for my children. This is an incredible meeting. We're here and we're trying to communicate with each other. You know, a gentleman that's in this room told me a few years ago, he said, Jimmy, communication is the easiest thing in the world to do and the most difficult thing to do right. And I found that to be true. And so as we're here trying to communicate, we're doing a good job with ourselves. You know, we're preaching to the choir. We understand that. The vast majority of the people in North Carolina have no idea about what's going on in this meeting. And the attempt to get the word out to them is a great challenge that we have. But I agree with Senator Jackson that, to use a colloquial term, we have been woke up. And our challenge is to stay woke up. My granny told me one time, she said, Jimmy, there's going to come times in life when you're going to have to go beyond explaining things to people so that they'll understand. She said, there'll be a few times in life when you have to explain it to people so that they won't misunderstand. And there's a vital difference between that. So very briefly, I'm going to go and take you inside what I believe was some of the genesis acts of where this is at. When we were passing the nuisance bill, House Bill 467 in 2017, Bill Graham from the Graham and Wallace Law Firm in Salisbury came and we met in David Lewis's office. And Mr. Graham started talking about the deficiencies in livestock agriculture. And he made some very offensive statements to me about my family, about my neighbors, and about our industry. And I sat there very quietly for a period of time. And this is important, ladies and gentlemen. This is important. And I listened for a while. And then when it came my turn to speak, I said, Mr. Graham, you've offended me. You're talking about my family. You're talking about my friends. You're talking about my small farmers. And I said a few other things. Oh, no, Representative Dixon. No, you've misunderstood me. This is about the Chinese, and they can afford to pay us. Now, I want you to understand the word us. He didn't say a damn thing about the small farmers. He didn't say anything about helping us to improve our circumstances. None of that. It's the Chinese, and they can afford to pay us. This is an egregious grab of money by the Byron and Budd law firm from Dallas, Texas, combined with Bill Graham and Mona Lisa Wallace from Salisbury, North Carolina, to come in and try to convince me that it's about the big wealthy owners of this company. Well, I invite them to come to me. I give them an open invitation to come with me on Joey Carter's farm, a man that has never had one complaint. And I do wish the news media would pick up on something like this. Never had a complaint. Never had a violation. The people who sued him bought the land from his father, built their home there, signed a waiver for him to use a spray field, and then turned around and sued him. And this biased judge in this federal court did not allow us to be judged by a group of our peers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're a free nation, as others have alluded to. We're a free nation because of a lot of different things. But I think if you combine all of them together, they will not equal the fact that we've been able to feed and clothe ourselves. God be thanked that there are farmers who are willing to put up with the circumstances of production which are not always pleasant, so that others can enjoy the benefits of consumption. That's what it's about. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dixon. Part of our task here, part of our purpose here is to help educate and inform the public at large, because when you have an informed citizenry, everything else works that much better. And our system of government absolutely depends upon it. So with that, let me open it up for any other comments that anybody may have around the table. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promised Jimmy Dixon that I would say something because I sit on the other side of the aisle, and I want to say I appreciate your leadership and Representative Bell's leadership in shepherding this thing through the House, because it wasn't easy. and we all had to take a lot of heat about it in the process. So thank you for that. It was very worthwhile. And it was a little tougher on me from where I sit, but I was willing to go home if that's what it took to get this bill passed. But it,
Tell everybody who you are and what county you represent.
I'm sorry, I'm Representative Ken Goodman. I'm from Richmond County. I'm a Democrat. I think I was the only Democrat that voted for the Farm Bill, but I was proud to do it. I was just thinking while we were talking there, one quick thing before I shut up, that everybody's heard of Willie Sutton, who was a bank robber, that when asked why he robbed the banks, he said, because that's where the money is. If he were alive today, he'd go to law school. And the News and Observer would pay us tuition for him. So that's kind of funny, but it makes the point. It really does. That when people tell you it's not the money, it's the principle of the thing, it's the money. So thank you very much.
You know, the legal profession used to be a real profession, and of course you need good lawyers. It's important. But in many cases, it's become a big business. And legal profession ought to be about facilitating commerce, not destroying commerce. Representative Bell.
Thank you, Congressman Rouser. You know, we've talked about agriculture, and we talked about being our state's largest economic impact, $87 billion plus and growing.
Take your microphone there a little bit.
Our second
there you go.
largest economic impact is our military. And I know when Senator Tillis was Speaker of the House, under direction, working currently now with Lieutenant Governor Forrest and our colleagues here, we've made a huge effort into being the most military-friendly state in the country. And so I would say that not only is our agriculture industry at war, but it directly affects our military. Military represents a $55 billion economic impact, and a lot of our farmland buffers our military bases, which protects against encroachment issues. If our jets at Seymour Johnson can't fly, they can't train, which means they move. The mission moves. And so when farmers are being put out of business and have to sell their land to developers, well, who's going to be there to buy the development? But when farmers are forced off the farm to have to sell their land, it puts our military bases at risk. So this is more than a bigger issue in agriculture. You look at the ripple effect that it has. I look in my community, in Wayne, Green, Lenoir, and Craven County. Agriculture is the backbone. Military is our second largest economic impact. All our folks and friends from Raleigh like to come to me at the General Assembly and say, hey, we want to go to Chef and the Farmer, one of the largest farm-to-table restaurants in eastern North Carolina. Well, how do you think the food gets there? And so we look at our car dealerships, we look at our realtors, we look at every advertiser and promoter that actually buys ads from the news media here and puts ads in the newspapers there. The majority of them are agriculture-based entities. If not agriculture, you look at our car dealerships. How many trucks are bought in eastern North Carolina from outside of agriculture? So this is a huge ripple effect that the community, my community's woke up. But it is so much bigger than just our hog farming operations. It's a ripple effect that would devastate our communities. You want to talk about a welfare state? Lose agriculture in eastern North Carolina. We would not exist. Little towns and communities all throughout our state would not exist. So this is a major issue, and I'm glad my friends from other states are here because we're going to beat it here in North Carolina. There's no doubt about it. This is amazing. Look at this. This is amazing. Look at what we're doing here in North Carolina, and I'm glad you have our back because when we get it done here and it comes to you, we're going to have your back because this is a nationwide, if not worldwide issue. Thank you.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, when you get to Goldsboro, you hear these fighter jets, and you know, some people drive through town and they say, "What is that?" And the locals will tell you right quick, "That's the sound of freedom." And which brings us to the point of how important agriculture is to our food security is incredibly important to our national security. So John is absolutely right. It absolutely all goes together. Our Lieutenant Governor is here, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, David. Listen, I'm honored to be here with you, so thank you. I think it's all been said. I don't think I need to repeat anything that's been said around the table, and all very pertinent to where we are today. I'm actually going to direct my comments to the media in the back there, because we talk about communication, and Jimmy Dixon was talking about, we have this, it's incumbent upon us to be able to communicate. And the folks back here with the cameras and the tablets writing down the story here, it's really incumbent upon you to tell the truth. I mean, I've been reading story after story and watching news story after news story and seeing these really nasty little editorial cartoons, of some of which I'm, the object of. And it's really a shame, because the truth of this issue has not gotten out. And we've had cameras there and we've had reporters there at every one of these events, and I still have not heard the story told in this way. And so I hope that after you see people coming from all over the country, see leaders from around our country coming here to defend and support agriculture in North Carolina, that you'll go home, you'll go back to your offices, you'll go back to your TV stations, and you will actually report the truth about what's going on here. That's all we're asking for. We're just asking for transparency and truth. We don't need it twisted and one way or the other, just the truth about what's going on. And so communication's tough from our perspective, but you have the tools to be able to tell North Carolina, tell America, and tell the world about what's going on here, and I really hope that that's what happens after this meeting. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to make mention of a very distinguished gentleman, a very special guest that's here today, Dean, Dean Linton, our Dean for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Where are you? I know you're around here somewhere. Great to have you here. There's always been an incredible partnership between the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at NC State and our land grant at A&T as well, and our Commissioner of Agriculture and the North Carolina Farm Bureau. And that leads me to our President of North Carolina Farm Bureau, Larry Wooten.
Well, thank you, Congressman Rouser, and certainly I want to take this opportunity particularly to thank all the leaders nationally, commodity leaders from outside of North Carolina to come here. Chairman Conaway, thank you for taking time. I know you've got a busy schedule, and certainly we're depending on you to help us get that farm bill through, as Zippy mentioned, but let's give him a hand. And certainly you mentioned Dean Linton, Dean Paul Lund, Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine, is here with us today also. And Dean Lund, thank you for being here with us. I think, and certainly national leaders are here. I want to recognize Harry Ott. Harry Ott's the president of South Carolina Farm Bureau. Harry, thank you for being here with us. But ladies and gentlemen, it's more than just the people in this audience. It's more than the 700 over in the Scott building that are listening today through the power of technology. And I want to thank Peter Daniel and the Farm Bureau technology team over there, communications team. We are Facebook Live in this dialogue today all across the United States. And I know there are farm bureaus in Tennessee, Kentucky, farm bureaus all over the country that are listening. And certainly Senator Tillis helping us to be aware of what's going on in North Carolina. And I think that's the value of where we are today. This is going to get over. I think we've all said it. This is going to get over in North Carolina at some point. The lawyers may get some money, some plaintiffs may get some money, but what concerns me are the scars that could be left in rural North Carolina, in our rural communities. And certainly Commissioner Troxler and I have talked about it. If we're going to be successful in North Carolina, it's going to take all of us working together. And certainly, that's particularly true in rural North Carolina. And so we need to remember that we've got after this is over, we got some work to do to make sure that our rural communities pull together and move forward for the good of agriculture, but also for the good, Zippy, of those rural communities. So thank all of you for being here, and thank all of you for being in attendance today.
Thank you, Larry. I'll open it up for anybody, and in fact, any of the commodity leaders that might have a comment that they want to make. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, well,
Dr. Hill.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you. I've got a prepared statement, but before I do that, I just want to say that when I was asked to come to this, I did it willingly because I wanted to represent the 60,000 pork producers in the United States that NPPC represents, the National Pork Producers Council represents. So on behalf of those producers, I will give my prepared statement. My name is Dr. Howard Hill. I'm a veterinarian and pork producer from Cambridge, Iowa, past president of the National Pork Producers Council. I'm also past chairman of the NPPC Environmental Policy Committee and spent many years working on issues associated with managing manure and other operations at hog farms to protect water and air quality. Pork producers have a long and proud history of working hard to improve their farms by addressing the concerns of neighbors and being among the most supportive of regulations, policies, and programs that both protect the environment and secure the future of livestock farming for future generations. I've traveled from Iowa to speak to you about the concerns of the U.S. pork industry, but I want to mention that early in my career I spent time here in North Carolina. And one thing I've seen is that farmers in North Carolina or Iowa or anywhere else have the same outlook and dedication to the improvement of their farms and the well-being of their rural communities. At the heart of this is the desire to be good and responsible neighbors. If you ask anyone in rural America, we are good neighbors. We live in the same communities. We coach in the local sports leagues. We staff the volunteer fire departments. We are leaders in our local churches, and we strive to make our communities better. It is this dedication to our communities that drive hog farmers like me to continue to improve the performance of our farms and reduce our environmental footprint. Livestock farmers today are in a serious crisis. For decades, as families left farming to pursue other economic opportunities, the United States has relied on the right to farm laws to ensure farmers could farm without fear of litigation over the natural noises and smells created by raising the livestock that feed our nation and the world. Every state in the country has some form of right to farm law because every state in the country has recognized the importance of protecting agriculture. But as I stand before you today, a single biased judge in a courtroom just a couple miles down the road has decided to throw this arrangement out. He believes that people who have moved to our rural communities, and in one case which has been mentioned, purchased their land from a farmer's family, can then turn around and sue the farmer, for millions of dollars for doing nothing more than simply farming. Then, if this wasn't bad enough, despite state laws prohibiting this, he has compounded the problem by allowing for punitive damages. Punitive damages are meant to punish bad actors, people who have shown no regard for their neighbors, people, according to the definition in Black's Law Dictionary, I'm not an attorney, thank goodness, who act with malice or engage in wanton or wicked conduct. That does not represent our pork producers. And when the farmers stop farming, who will suffer? That's the question we have to ask. Ultimately, those small local communities who no longer have an economic base, which has been pointed out by other speakers this morning, or the jobs they bring, or food to eat. Enough is enough, and it's time for our elected leaders to step up and stop this madness. And thank you very much, and I appreciate the efforts that you've gone to put this together. I think it's been very important.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. You know, one of the most important objectives, you know, of our roundtable here is to stress that this is more than just a few farms in North Carolina. This is more and much broader than just hog operations in North Carolina. This is all of agriculture. This is the entire country because what is done here will easily be replicated in other places. And it was mentioned that most of the states have a Right to Farm Act. in various places, you know, a lot of those states, a lot of those laws are different. And even when you think you've got the best law possible, somebody creative will show you that there's always improvement that can be made. And so I think it's important for us at the federal level, you know, to have the discussion and to be thinking about what we might be able to do nationally to help, because this is, like I said, it's not just a North Carolina issue, not just a Delaware issue. It really is a national issue. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator. And Commissioner Troxler, thank you for inviting NASDA to be here. I am Dr. Barb Glenn. I'm the CEO of the National Association of State Departments of Ag, and I am humbled to be here on the shoulders of 5 of my members whom we have heard from today. And I want to share with you the commitment that state departments of agriculture have to work together to solve this issue. What are we learning here today? This is a very important conversation. What are we learning from North Carolina? We need to protect and defend American agriculture and our families. We will work with the American Farm Bureau Federation, just as they represent 50 states, so do we. So we will be looking for smart policy going forward, Mr. Chairman. Really glad, Senator, you said let's leave here with a to-do list and let's get after it, because there's a lot we can do. We're looking at, and NASDA supports investment in agricultural research. How can we bring practices forward to farmers and ranchers to help them grow more sustainable food? And guess what? We all agree on more sustainable food. So how do we bring the farm to table together and have a community dialogue in the urban and rural space that Commissioner Weathers spoke about? So these are the things that we think are forward-leaning, emerging. We've got to get on it. We've got a chance to get started today. So thank you so much for allowing NASDA to be here. I'm humbled again by being here with 5 of my members. There are 45 more, plus 4 territories, standing right with us today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the audience, so that they can see, if you are from out of state, raise your hand. Good number of folks here from other states. It's always impressive when you can gather folks from other states to come to yours, but the folks that we have in this room are they're in high cotton, as we say. These are the cream of the crop leaders in their respective fields and in various commodities around the country. So it's really, we're very, very grateful to have you here. It really helps to underscore the significance of what we're facing. Any other comments from around the round table, or if there are some commodity leaders here in front of me that want to say a few words, now's your time. Yes, sir.
I would just like to, on behalf of Braswell Family Farms.
If you don't mind, stand up and announce who you are and where you're from.
Trey Braswell, Braswell Family Farms, we're in Nash County. You know, and I'm here on behalf of the United Egg Producers and our company. And I think, you know, the important thing for us is, you know, as the producers, you know, we're encouraged and we want to fight, but we just kind of need to know, you know, what's the next step? What do we do from here? How do we join together and go forward from this place and take this information and this enthusiasm that we've got, and what do we do next? You know, I think that's from a producer standpoint, what is that?
I think that's a very good point, and you know, one of the things I think is so critically important, we in agriculture, those of you who have made this your living and your profession, and it truly is a profession, as I said earlier, you have federal laws and rules you abide by, state laws and rules that you abide by. This is not the wild, wild west of old-time agriculture from years past. These operations, organizations are very technical, highly sophisticated, and just a real professional operations in every right. We do exceptionally well in terms of producing food and fiber. We don't always do as well in communicating to the broader public the importance of what we do, what each of you do, and the importance of agriculture nationwide. And so I think this is a real opportunity for all the commodity groups, not only here in North Carolina, but all around the country, to talk a little more strongly, advocate a little more fervently, and go out and tell the story of American agriculture. You know, most of these folks that are sitting on these juries, many of them probably have never ever been to a farm. You know, many of them probably have heard things in the courtroom, words that they, you know, really don't truly understand the meaning of. And that's not really their fault. You know, we all come to our conclusions based on the best knowledge we have at the time that we have it. So it's really incumbent upon us, you know, to help educate the public so we can have an informed citizenry, so that you have juries where folks will pipe up and say, well, you know, that's not what I heard the other day. Maybe we should think about this from a little bit different perspective. So I think that's really a challenge for everybody here in this room, all of our commodity groups, all of our elected officials, to talk about this and talk about the importance of it so that we have a more informed, you know, public. Jimmy Dixon, you had something.
Chairman Roger, thank you. I think this needs to be said from the highest level of Smithfield Foods. I've been in some very special meetings with the highest level of their management. And Smithfield Foods has said that they will not settle. Thank God that Smithfield Foods has got the backbone to be able to stand up to these lawsuits and not settle, which is what these plaintiff attorneys want. So I salute Smithfield Foods for their commitment to stand with their small family farmers and not be taken in by these lawyers who seek money for themselves.
David. Senator Tillis.
I believe while this hearing was going on, we've had an award of $75 million and against the defendants that we can, I don't know if anybody here can give the details, but literally while this meeting's going on, another blow has been struck, which is exactly why we can't leave this meeting and go back individually. We need to get to every Commissioner of Agriculture. We need to get to every speaker and Senate leader and states that care about this issue. And we need to figure out how we continue to have this dialogue week after week after week until we pin them down. And so we need to go, we don't need to do it here, we're about to wrap up, but we need to make sure that we prove to the people on the other side of this issue that we're bigger than them, that this is important, and we're going to stop them.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. And I think there are a number of us at the federal level that are going to be working and exploring to see what we can do from a legislative perspective. As I mentioned, it just strikes me that, and this is more of a Judiciary Committee jurisdiction than it is an Agriculture Committee jurisdiction, but it just strikes me that if you're following all the rules and regulations at state and federal level, there should be some form of safe harbor where you're protected against these type of legal actions. And as we all agree, the nuisance to one person today could be a very different item for the next person tomorrow. So there's a real slippery slope here. We're going to wrap this thing up, and let me give you a couple of instructions as we do. I want to make sure that the press has an opportunity to get out first. We're going to have a press conference right after this, so everybody that is seated and in the audience, if you can stay seated while the press has the opportunity to set up right outside here, we'll let them get squared away. There are several of us that are going to participate in the press conference, and those of you who are seated in front of me or other commodity groups that want to stand behind us, you're welcome to do so. And anybody that wants to say a few words at the press conference, that's here at the Roundtable or among the commodity groups, you're certainly welcome. Some of you I know have got to head on. One of those individuals right after our press conference is going to be heading out, Chairman Mike Conaway, who's come in from Texas. Again, everybody give him a real round of applause for being here.
I'd really rather you save that till I get a farm bill done. That would you can clap.
We're going to get the farm bill done. We're absolutely going to get the farm bill done. And let me say something about Mike Conaway. I've had the opportunity over the course of my career to work with a lot of different members in the House and the Senate at the federal level and at the state level. And nobody takes his job more seriously, more diligently than Mike Conaway. He's very, very thorough. And he is a stickler for time, which I'm quite cognizant of. And even though I'm chairing the roundtable here, I got you right to my right. And I want you to know it is 10:26.
Yep.
And
we started early too. That's even better.
That's right. And so we're going to be out of here on time, so you can get to the airport. Thank you all very much. And the press, you all can go ahead and set up outside while they're getting set up and moving. Everybody just stay put so that they can get set up as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Here.